Okay, so here we've got almost increasing sequence. Given a sequence of integers as an array, determine whether it is possible to obtain a strictly increasing sequence by removing no more than one element from the array. So, for example, if we're given 1, 2, 2, and 3, we know that by removing one element, we can make this array strictly increasing. However, if we were given an array like this, we would have to remove two elements, 4 and 3, to make it strictly increasing. So it would need to return false. So first of all, we know that if our array is decreasing more than once at a time, we would have to return false. So if we have a counter, so let counter is equal to 0. If we have a counter, and if this counter hits more than 1, or if this counter is greater than 1, we would have to return false. We also know that we need to loop through our data. So we can do that with a for loop, and if we let I is equal to 0, and then I'm going to just change sequence to S. So S is equal to sequence, just to prevent me from typing it out every time. I is less than s.length, and then we're going to increment I by 1 each time. Right. So if we sort of compare them up, console.log s I minus 1 and also si, run the tests, what you'll be able to see here is we're doing an unnecessary loop at the beginning. Unidentified and 1. We don't need to do that loop. We don't need to compare the -1 index and the 0 index. So if we just let I is equal to 1, we're going to prevent that loop from happening, that start of the loop from happening. Awesome. So now we've sort of got these paired up, we need to compare them together. And the way in how we can do that is by doing if the I is less than or equal to, if Si is greater than or equal to Si minus 1. And here, if the item isn't increasing, then we need to sort it out. We need to figure out how we can make it so that the array is sort of strictly increasing. But if I was to just do counter, console log si and s I minus 1, run the tests, what we can see here is it's suddenly decreasing. A better way of maybe typing this out so it's not all sort of flipped over would be like this. And then if I throw that onto this side here, it'll give us the exact same. But what we're saying is 3 and 2, 2 and 1. Okay, so our array is decreasing at these points in the sequence. But every time we see that it's decreasing, we want to increment our counter by 1. And if it's decreasing at 2 parts in our sequence, then we know that it's not almost increasing because it's decreasing at two parts in our sequence, so we need to return false. So if counter is greater than 1, just return false. And then what this will do is if I bring this console log down, you'll see that now we're actually just looping through it sort of once. We're not getting that second decreasing value. It's just going to stop here and return false. So the next part is we need to look at removing the previous element or removing our current element. And if removing these two sort of elements don't help, then it's going to take more than removing one element in order to make it increasing. So we know that it's not. So by removing two elements at once, we know that it's not going to be almost increasing. So for instance, if s, oh goodness me, if s I minus 2 is greater than or equal to si. So what we're doing is we're sort of removing si minus 1. And if si minus 1 is greater than or equal to si plus 1, what we're doing here is sort of removing the current index, the current element. But if both of these actually come to true, we know that we're actually having to remove more than one element, which isn't actually allowed. We're only allowed to remove one element. So if this was true and this one was false, it's like, okay, well, this is allowed. You've removed one element and it's still almost increasing. This one's false, so it's like you've just removed the one element. So we don't need to do anything. Let's carry on with our loop. If we find another decreasing part in this loop, the counter will take care of that because it's going to hit 2, and then we're just going to return false. However, say our counter is 0, it goes up 1, and then this part of the condition hits true, and then say like removing the minus 1 index and then comparing minus 2 and the current index, and that's true, and then by removing the our current index and comparing the one in front and the one behind, and that's true, it actually means that we've removed two elements, so we need to return false. And if all of this, if the whole loop happen, if each condition in here is false each time and it doesn't return false, then we know that the sequence must be almost increasing, which means we need to return true. It can take a while to sort of wrap your head around it. I find the most confusing part is this line here. But literally, if I was to, let's go here and then just do true, run tests, and we're hitting this one here, yeah. So I'm just going to find out which one, just to make it a bit quicker. Console.log I, so we know what index, and that's not worked, and that's because it's a single line. So let's just do that. And the return's still on that line, so let's bring that down. Okay, and then what test was we looking at? So we was looking at 1, 2, 1, 2, which is this one here. 0, 1, 2. We're at index 1. Okay. So we're currently here. And all what this line is doing, if I actually show it and make it so it's easier to understand, let's get the thick pen out. So we're at current index 2, which is element 1. So we're comparing 1, the index 0 and index 2. So we're removing index 1. And we're saying, is 1 greater than or equal to 1? Well, it is. And then with this one here, we're saying s minus 1 and s plus 1. So we're currently removing our current index, and we're figuring out, is 2 greater than or equal to 2? Well, it is. So it means that we must have to remove more than one element, which means we have to return false because we can't remove more than one element. So yeah, that's how you'd get to the solution of almost increasing sequence. And I need to change this to false. Your previous solution has been kept since it's got R, which is false. There we go.